Welcome back to another edition of Bioprocess Online Live. I am your host, Matt Pillar, Chief Editor at Bioprocess Online and host of the Business of Biotech podcast. And I'm thrilled you've joined us this morning. Straight from the top, I want to offer a sincere thank you to 3M for its generous support of today's event. So today's program will focus on the efficiencies and increasingly inefficiencies associated with manufacturing antibodies using platforms that in many cases were developed during and for a time when therapeutic antibodies were considerably less complex than they are today. To address that paradigm and more, I've invited two bioprocessing pros to join me for today's discussion. In their roles at Altru Bio and EQRx, respectively, Dr. Jean Lee and Avril Vermunt spend their days with their sleeves rolled up addressing these mAb manufacturing efficiency challenges from early discovery through development and on to manufacturing. Avril is Senior Director of Manufacturing Sciences and Technology at EQRx, and in her role there, she seeks to exploit technology to drive value in process development, design, scale-up, engineering, and manufacturing. For its part, EQRx is a late clinical stage biopharma with 5 phase 3 candidates, 2 of which are mAbs for non-small cell lung cancer and hepatocellular carcinoma. Avril brings a unique perspective to our conversation in that she's held technical and process dev roles in virtually every major facet of the biopharma industry, including a CMO, a big biotech, a top supplier, a gene therapy company, and a SPAC-backed startup. Those companies include Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies, Amgen, GE Healthcare, which is now Cytiva, Adverum Biotechnologies, and EQRx. Dr. Jean Lee was recently promoted to Chief Technical Officer at Altru Bio, where he previously served as VP of Technical Development. He's also well-traveled, having spent nearly 12 years with EMD Serono, 10 years at Wyeth Biopharma, and a couple at Persivia after his postdoctoral fellowship at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. He's also no stranger to us, having joined me as a guest on episode 66 of the Business of Biotech podcast, where he shared great advice on CMC developability assessments and their role in expediting the path to the clinic. Shameless plug there, please do check out my podcast. For its part, Altru Bio has completed phase 2A trials of its lead mAb candidate in psoriatic arthritis and ulcerative colitis, and is currently in phase 1 with that product in steroid refractory graft versus host disease and acute graft versus host disease. Avril and Jean, welcome to you both, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Matt. Great to be back here again.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you guys set the time aside for us, and we're going to jump right into it. We have a full agenda today, but just a quick reminder to those of you who are tuning in that in addition to my questions for Avril and Jean, we welcome yours, and we'll be taking them throughout the conversation. So Dr. Lee, you and Altru Bio President and CEO Dr. Judy Chow, who, by the way, has also been a guest on the podcast, have both been quite vocal about the need for innovation and tech adoption in mAb manufacturing. So I want to start out with just why it's so important in the context of the economics of mAb development and manufacturing at Altru Bio. Why is that so central to the mission?
Yeah, maybe if I can tell a quick story first.
Of course,
Matt.
yeah.
So years ago, I had the chance to visit a manufacturing plant in Denmark. They had this really highly automated process and very well-trained staff to operate the machinery. So the operations were just super impressive. But plot twist, they weren't making biologics, they were making essentially popsicle sticks. So finished wood products from lumber. You would feed the wood in one end and you would get these high value finished wood products that they would then ship to secondary manufacturers, for example, the ice cream bar makers. I learned that the raw material where the plant was based became very expensive. And so it became cheaper for that company to actually move the machine and the operations from Denmark and also Central Europe, where the factory was located, to Canada. The lumber, the raw material there was readily available, and it was cheaper just to set up that operation in Canada than to ship trees essentially for every batch that they need to make. And I asked him, I was very curious at the time, what was behind that sort of thought process. And basically, he was of the opinion that for his company, it was all about getting product to the customer faster and cheaper. I mean, that was the way that he was going to stay in business. And really, in essence, that's kind of our mission as well at UltraBio. It's really about getting the product to the patients. And so then you start to think about how you can do that more quickly, because we have to face intense competition. We need to get to the clinic with our product as fast as we can. And then looking ahead, in the long term, we also are very aware, as are our colleagues in the industry, that there are intense cost pressures. We want to be able to make our product accessible to patients at a price that is affordable. And really, those two things, I think, lend themselves well to really looking at the platform processes as they exist today and maybe rethinking how we apply them. There's a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge that has gone into mAb platform technology today. And really, it behooves us to leverage that experience going forward. We wouldn't want to sort of rework the entire process from scratch. I mean, that would be a very inefficient way to go about it. But clearly, as you pointed out, Matt, with more complex biologics being developed today, beyond the so-called vanilla monoclonal antibodies, the platform doesn't always work well. And so rather than reinventing the wheel and changing the platform process, I think now it's really up to us to think of how to make those platform processes more efficient. I think there's been a lot of really impressive work in recent years in process intensification, and hopefully we get to talk a little bit more about that later on in this podcast. But that has really enabled companies such as ours to be more innovative, think of things beyond antibodies to get more interesting products into the clinic quickly and cheaply. So for sure, ways to improve upon an already robust platform, I think, are the kinds of thing that Judy and I and others are thinking about as ways to really solidify our mission of getting our product to the patient.
Yeah, we certainly will get into some of the nuts and bolts around process intensification and other efforts there, the specifics of those. Now, if I had to venture a guess from the outset on what parallel or not even parallel industry you might draw an analogy to, popsicle sticks probably never would have been my first guess, but very good, well understood. Avril, I want to kind of pose the same question to you with a little bit of some foreshadowing on EQRx. I mean, your company, from its website on down, is extremely forward and vocal about its mission to change the biologic medicine cost equation. As you know, I spend a lot of my hours speaking with leaders of biologic development companies. And a lot of them mention cost and accessibility and patient experience, but I've not seen any company perhaps declare it so centrally and boldly to the mission as EQRx has. So share a little bit with us, Avril, about that crusade at EQRx.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Matt. I will have to say that despite spending my entire career observing how we innovate, how we adopt technology, how we produce drugs in a robust, efficient manner, I was a little skeptical when I saw all that messaging as well. And so I came into it with some questions around how that would be done. I don't necessarily want to talk about the business model because there's so much already available. You mentioned the website and our YouTube channel. So there's a lot on that. But I think what's interesting is, given the way we're approaching things, there's a lot of almost pressure on manufacturing to deliver on what all the other groups are doing. And so I think it was a good fit for me because I've gotten to observe, as you mentioned, a lot of different approaches to process technology, manufacturing. And with that in mind, it was able to come into this role thinking, you can do a cheaper version of something. That's one approach. But at EQRx, we want to give something that's best in class to our patients. And so our manufacturing also has to keep that in mind. It can't be just a cheaper version of whatever else is on the market.